Good afternoon. On behalf of the University of Chile, we welcome you all to this opportunity for academic dialogue about hydric scarcity, governance, and hydric resources management called Seminario Water Development, Sustainability and Technology, an opportunity that gathers authorities, researchers, and experts that will share different experiences regarding this topic. We receive at this honor hall, given the pandemic, we have a reduced capacity, but there is this possibility with a broadcast through our social media for those that want to follow us up in English and the sound as well in Spanish. To talk about this, the origin of this initiative, I'd like to invite to the stage Professor Alejandro Jofre, Vice Dean of the University of Chile. Good afternoon, everybody. First of all, I'd like to thank you all for your presence to this seminar about waters. And as the title goes, Development, Sustainability, and Technology. And we wanted to put it together because it seemed to us that this relationship in a systemic way and a transdisciplinary overview about water, it seems for us relevant to look at this like this way. And the challenges are big. As you all know, here amongst the attendees are experts on the subject. And when I say experts, with this interdisciplinary overview, because water is as a development for the country, for energy, and so many other topics to be developed regionally and domestically. First of all, I'd like to greet the Minister of Sciences. I'd like to thank him for his presence, and also the Ministry of Environment through a video. She had to travel unexpectedly to the south of Chile, so through our social media. And I'd like to thank the ambassador of Israel. In Israel, so the idea is to have an open discussion, a critical and deep discussion about water, because it has to do with governance and also the technical part of the absorption processes. With this, I'd like to simply say that for us at the University of Chile, it is key to provide through this open seminar all the elements necessary to keep moving forward in public policies as a solution for the big challenges, particularly speaking in water. This is the first seminar regarding the topic water, in a series of seminars that we're organizing currently. And I'd like to thank you all for your presence, and we think that Chile has a big opportunity here in terms of showing to the world an innovative solution and at the same time inclusive solution, thinking of the society's developments in terms of waters. We have a great opportunity here to be a country with a greener energy more and more, and water and energy get together in this sense closely, and we want to take advantage of that situation. It's a moment that is special because in the new ministries, at the new administration, the Ministry of Environment takes over the role of coordination in terms in the topic of waters, and this is a change compared to previous administrations, and particularly the establishment of the Interministerial Committee of Fair Hydric Transition, which is a committee that will be key in what is ahead. So it seemed to us quite important to have the Minister of Sciences and also the Minister of Environment. Thank you all. In this seminar, as you could see, you received the information Friday last, and I'd like to thank our local team, our communications team at the University of Chile, supported by Marila Rabanal, who's out there, and she was very quick, and everybody was very quick to invite our guests, the ambassador and our guest speaker from from Israel, and also people at the embassy, and many colleagues as well, collaborating in different ways, inviting more and more colleagues. So we have the presence of several universities here, not only the University of Chile, but also the Catholic University. And Fernando Perez helped us out with that one, getting them involved. And the idea is to add more people to this initiative. The University of Playa Ancha and Concepcion, there are desalination experts as well, and so that this can be more exclusive in terms of more experts, not only from the University of Chile, but others. So we are here at the Hall of Honor, and this is a symbol for us because parts of history of Chile have gone through here, and I'd like to refer to just one statement. We always repeat it, but it's always a good idea to repeat it. The university is a place where all the truths are touched. There's no better example than water, which it means to touch all the truths when discussing water. And this is the spirit that we want to show here and appear at our discussion. So thank you very much for your presence. Without further ado, I'd like to invite you to visualize Maisa Rojas' presentation, Minister of Environment, who could not be here with us today, but she sent us her presentation, which is called Fair Hydric Transition. Vice Dean, Mr. James McPhee, Vice Dean of the Faculty of Physical Sciences and Mathematics of the University of Chile, representatives of the Israel's embassy, guest speakers. Please have all a good afternoon. I thank all the organizers for the invitation to this event, where unfortunately I cannot be there on site. But when you're watching this video, we'll be doing work on site, precisely getting to know and reviewing together with the local authorities and actors the challenges and opportunities of the water governance at the ecosystems in that region. We're going through a year of many changes, which, depending on how we face it, we can define a Chile that took over the hydric crisis and climate change crisis, going towards a more resilient country together. Even though we know that the current hydric scarcity are quite remarked by a fragmented management and sectorial management of the water, we cannot overlook that we were going through a major drought whose impacts are real and painful. During the last 13 years, precipitation has gone down between 20 and 40% in the regions of the macro southern area and the central part of the country, which translates into amplified decreases of the streams, accumulation of snow, and also the aquifer recharge. Therefore, we must acknowledge that Chile is going through a hydric scarcity, and according to the forecasts, it will be drier and drier. Therefore, our big challenge is to adapt ourselves to this scenario to achieve hydric security. And we need to achieve a sustainable development that includes everybody, guided by the principles of equity and justice. The universities and research centers play a key role to address this challenge because of their continuous contribution to the generation of knowledge that strengthens the discussion and definition of public policies. Therefore, and at the same time, technological development to increase efficiency in the use of water, and then the search of new sources or monitoring systems to make this water use more efficient and sustainable, preserving the ecosystems. Therefore, a big applause to this type of initiative, where come together in a scenario of respect the different disciplines with a pursuit of contributing to the building of strategies to face this challenge. On my side, I can tell you that the Ministry of Environment is coordinating the Interministerial Committee for Fair Hydric Transition, which is a change of focus in this management, starting with the acknowledgement that water has different functions. One social function, ecosystemic and productive functions, which require an integral overview of the water management that transcends interests and sectorial aims. Therefore, amongst the plans is the national planning of the infrastructure for water, with a focus on multi-purpose infrastructure and also desalination strategy. We know that the structure is essential for the assurance of water access, drinkable water access in the development of the country, but at the same time we acknowledge that this type of project requires improvements in the planning phases, such as the definition of its location, design, and technology, as well as benefits considering climate change and the externalities that are generated, keeping in mind always a higher standard in the impact assessment socially in facing changing environments. In this context, technology must be one of the factors to be integrated into the debate, which can use strategic territorial planning together with different other factors, which are the acknowledgement of different courses and values of water, equity and access, impacts on the ecosystem, the incorporation of green infrastructure, amongst others. Even more important, this planning would be incomplete without demand water management. Therefore, the development of infrastructure must go hand in hand with a rational use of water, investment in efficiency, and strengthening of governance. The solutions to hydric problems are not simple and require a coordinated effort of everybody from our different disciplines. Therefore, I celebrate that at this seminar, multiple dimensions are approached and addressed, from governance to desalination, going through systemic visions of hydric scarcity and multi-scholar assessment of infrastructure for human consumption. The topics to be discussed are a contribution for the reflection surrounding questions and decisions that we will have to take in the shortest term. Therefore, we invite you all to keep talking about it. Thank you very much. We thank the Minister Rojas for her greetings. Right now, I will leave you with Mr. Flavio Salazar, Minister of Sciences, Technology, and Knowledge and Innovation, that will present the importance of the environment for the new development model. Good afternoon, everybody. Mr. Vice Dean, Mrs. Ambassadors, international guest speakers, academics, experts. To me, it's a big honor and a pleasure that you have invited me and I could come here personally to this activity. As the Minister of Environment clearly said, the Minister of Technology, Knowledge and Innovation, a long name, also has a concrete participation in this interministerial strategies. We were part of the Committee of Water, but also of the new development model committee together with Corfo, MOP, the energy ministries, and agriculture. In that context, one of the key elements for a new development model for the country, taking into account situations that are concrete. We are going through an important transition, undeniably, with an effect from climate change on our country that has generated and will generate a big impact in the ways that we were organized as society, and the movement, social movements, that somehow has focused their needs towards a fairer society with more strategic overview, whose main goal, defined in these conversations, the sustainability. The topic of the ecosystems and the environment is not only something that we need to have as an addition, but it's a goal in itself. A development model that is integral requires to integrate prolonged sustainability of the ecosystem that includes social development of people. When we talk about the new development model, we're thinking particularly about a different relationship between the state and the public role and the private role and the aims put forward. And that's why at the ministry we have designed a strategy that somehow will be functional to these new visions. And out of all the ministries in this interministerial discussion, we established as goals the generation of concrete measures in the short term that are urgent, need to be discussed and aligned with the long-term visions, as the minister herself said, that are difficult and challenging to be done in the short term, but we cannot take actions against them. And that's where the ministry has decided to implement some specific projects that have to do with several attributes that we want for a new development model that have to do with sustainability, inclusion of women, equity, inclusion, and decentralization, and transdisciplines, which are elements that are not only words, but have to do with the complexity of problems that we need to address and challenges that we need to address. The transdisciplinary vision turns out to be, without a question, where we have a problem that is so hard to solve, which is climate change and the hydric crisis. There are many interests coming into play and many goals that sometimes collide. And at this interministerial committee, it's not easy because some of the interests collide with the irrigation or the determined sector or preservation of nature on the other hand. The topic of development of a new industry, the green hydrogen that can contribute with a big impact internationally, generating an energy transition, but cannot be on the cost of the quality of life of people living in those regions, the invasion to their environment and non-distribution towards social development, education, better quality of life to all of them. So this is a complex challenge, but we believe that there is room, unlike other strategies, for everybody, for scientists, for experts, for communities, for organizations, because these topics must be discussed through knowledge. And that's where gatherings, meetings, seminars such as this, where everybody from your expertise can present data, the facts that there is right now based on evidence to generate this strategy that we need to put together. And that's where the international cooperation has a big role in all the projects that we're releasing or launching to recover, for example, the capacity of producing vaccines in Chile, to have an aerospatial program and a research center in the environment requires a close relationship with more developed countries, understanding their experiences, because thus we can speed up the learning processes and the incorporation of new policies. We don't need to invent everything from zero. There are experiences, particularly in this case, in the Middle East, particularly in Israel, there's a lot of experience regarding governance and adequate use of hydric resources that we can somehow adapt here, because we cannot make it similar, but we can extract the elements and adapt them to our own reality, taking into account our own characteristics. And that's why Chilean scientists cannot be absent from this, because reality and material elements are part of the research itself. Therefore, knowledge of the territory, of the people, of the national reality, of legislation are part of the strategy that we need to have. So I think that this event complies with everything, all the objectives that we are establishing for ourselves, and we thought, therefore, that it was important for us to come here to show a sign to incorporate everybody to this discussion that is urgent. We don't have time to delay it. At the same time that generating this discussion, we need to establish measures to move forward towards mitigation of the environmental impact and the correct use of water. I'm optimistic. I think we are in the right moment coming together in terms of the methodology to be used, and of course the conclusions of how and what to do will be part of this discussion with you. I thank again for this invitation, and I wish you the biggest success to this activity. Thank you. We thank the participation of Minister Rojas and Salazar. Right now, we would like to invite you to the second segment of this seminar, with which we will start with the presentations, Messieurs Lipschitz, Franco, and Berger. Initially, we greet Gypsy Lipschitz, sorry, it's hard your name, who will talk to us about governance and hydric resources. Mr. Lipschitz is an expert in Israel in hydric resources, governance, and technology at the service of territories. He was General Director at the Ministry of Energy and Water in Israel, and currently he's in charge of the General Direction of Infrastructure of Energy. Please, go ahead.
Well, good afternoon. Thank you very much. At first, I would like to thank the two ministers, their excellencies, for their participation in this very important event. I think that the participation of two ministers in this kind of seminar reflects the importance of that Chile gives to this critical issue of water supply. Thank you very much, Vice Dean, for having us here. I'm so jealous of you working in such a beautiful building. I graduated the Hebrew University more than 20 years ago, and it's considered to be a very nice buildings, very nice university. But you won the competition because your university is beautiful. I don't have other words. And of course, thanks for the Israeli ambassador, Ms. Marina Rosenberg, and her team for organizing our visit, Mr. Berger and myself, in Chile. We're having a great time. I think there is a wide range of cooperation between Israel and Chile in this such a critical and crucial issue in water supply. So during our visit, we met, and apologize for speaking in English. I hope that everyone who needs translation has his earphones. I need to learn Spanish. It's a beautiful language, but it will take me some time. I think we met so many smart people and professional people in our short visit. And it's not that Israel scientists are smarter or the professionals are smarter. It's just that we have more experience. Because what Chile is facing in the last decade or a little more than decade, Israel was facing since it was established or got its independence in 1948. So we have a lot of experience, and we would love to share our experience and knowledge with you, and of course to learn from you, your professionals, and your experience and your challenges. Because your challenge, I mentioned yesterday, your challenges might be my challenge in 5 years from now. So I think there's a lot of cooperation possibilities between Israel and Chile. And now I'll jump into the presentation. It's a long presentation. I'll try to speak faster than I speak usually, and Diego and Tatiana will show me how much time do I have left. So I will start with 2 slides of articles that show that the water scarcity, it's not a problem of Israel or problem of Chile, it's a worldwide problem. You can see here two countries in the Middle East, Iran and Jordan, our neighbor, that also face water scarcity. But not only that, you can see the problem that Germany has been facing in the last few years. Australia is well known for severe water scarcity or severe droughts. What I want to say, it's a worldwide problem. What we see due to the climate change, we say that the richer country, the country who has a lot of rain, will have more rain. Poor countries that have less rain, such as Chile, Israel, Middle East, will have less and less rain. That's why we have to be ready for the future. The future will give us more and more difficulties, and we have to get ready because the population is rising, the water needs are rising. We have to get ready for the future. So a few words about Israel. Israel, this very small dot here, you can see it here, about 22 square kilometers. Population is about a little more than 9 million residents. So the area is a little smaller than Chile, but 40 times smaller than Chile. So this is Israel, 3 numbers. This is the water consumption. Israel, we use the domestic sector. We have very strong agriculture sector, such as Chile. We also supply to the Jordan Kingdom, our neighbor, according to the peace agreement, 50 million cubic meters a year. And now there's a very exciting agreement between Israel and Jordan that Israel will buy electricity produced by solar panels, and Israel will sell Jordan Kingdom another 50 million cubic meters a year, because Jordan Kingdom is also facing water scarcity due to refugees coming from Syria, and also it's very, very dry country. Also, we give, according to the agreements with the Palestinian Authority, we supply water for the Palestinian Authority. All in all, the water demand in Israel is 2.2 billion cubic meters a year for all kinds of water, for the domestic, for industry, and for agriculture. This is Israel, as you can see here. About half of the country can be considered a desert. We call it a desert line. In half of the country, we have less than 100 millimeters of rain every year. In most rainy part, we have about 1,000 millimeters a year. But you see, we don't have too much rain. We spoke about the water needs is 2.2 billion cubic meters, but the natural enrichment is only 1.2 in average billion cubic meters a year. That means we have a gap of every year in average of 1 billion cubic meters a year, which is a lot. So how do we close this gap? We have actually 4, I call it pillars, 4 topics that we take care in Israel: regulation, water saving, reuse of treated sewage reuse, and desalination. And I hope I'll have enough time to speak about all of them, but let's start from regulation. I think this is the most important part in Israel. So according to the law, and this is different from Chile, I'm not saying that the Israeli model is the best one. I can only share with you our experience, our model. We know that you have difficulties, you have challenges that are different than Israel, the size of the country, culture, water rights, etc. So we can speak about the Israeli model, and of course, you cannot copy and paste it to Chile. I can share with you the principles. So according to Israeli water law, the water belongs to the public, actually to the government. And there's only one professional body that is in charge of all the water. It's called the Water Authority. And we heard from the Minister of Science, and yesterday we met the Minister of Agriculture, that today you are trying to build the same structure in Chile. You are building a cabinet of ministers, and the water, there is one minister that will be in charge of the water issues. Because what happened in Israel about 20 years ago is that many ministries were in charge of the water. What happens, many ministries are in charge, or many bodies are in charge. Actually, no one is in charge on anything. The same situation was in Israel. That's why we built the Water Authority. This is the structure of, I'll go back in a second. This is the Water Authority. There is a board of 8 members, 6 ministries, 2 public representatives. I sit here. I don't see if you're here. Minister of Energy. This is my seat. And other five ministries. But this is a board of directors that in charge of the regulation of all the water issues actually in Israel. I'll go back for 2 seconds. So again, all users pay for the water. Every drop in Israel is measured, and you have to pay, no matter if you live in a private house, if you're a farmer that uses potable water or treated water. Every drop of water is measured, and there is a price for every drop of water. All the expenses are covered by the water tariff. That means we don't have to beg to the government or to Ministry of Finance that holds the budget, or in Israel, or Ministry of Public Works. We need a budget for building another desalination plant, or building a sewage treatment plant. All the expenses are covered by the water tariff. I mean, again, this is the Israeli model. It has advantages, it has disadvantages, because you need to cover all the expenses, but that's the situation. The advantage is, of course, that we don't have to beg for, let's say, to fight with the Ministry of Health, that instead of buying Pfizer vaccinations, you should help me to build another desalination plant. So this is, of course, the advantage. There's another very important law that actually built special utilities owned by the municipalities that are in charge to distribute the water inside the municipality. So again, the structure is as following. We have producers of water, such as desalination, such as Mekorot, drills, etc. Then the water is transferred by Mekorot to the entrance of the municipality. And then inside the municipality, there's a special company owned by the municipality that distributes the water for all the houses, all the private houses. This utility, this company owned by the municipality leaves the money inside the company. What happened in the past was that the municipalities such as Jerusalem, Tel Aviv, they were in charge of the water. Since they were in charge of the water, the money was leaking from the municipality. Let's say I'm the mayor of Jerusalem, so I want to build schools, I want to build roads, I want to build a garden because I want to be elected in the coming elections. So I'll take money from the water sector and I'll put it to the road. I'll take money from the water company and I'll build a new school. What's happening today is the money stays in one place, goes for investments, go for salaries, but only for the water needs. Again, this is the model what we have in Israel. Okay, so these are the stakeholders: the regulator, the water authority, of course, the consumers, agriculture, private houses, domestic, industry, etc., and the suppliers such as Mekorot, desalination plant, the company's 56 water corporation that supply the water for urban needs for the domestic sector. Well, these are the main principles. First, regulation, the water authority that is located under my ministry, Ministry of Energy and Water. There's one decision point, one table that takes all the decisions. We set the water tariff, water regulation, we set the standards for all the water sector in Israel. Again, Israel is a small country, 22 square kilometers, so it's good for Israel. Maybe it's good for other regions inside Chile, but this is the model. About finance, the cost actually covers all the expenses. What we get from selling the water goes inside the water sector and covers all the expenses. And we have service standards. We tell Mekorot how much they should invest in every year in the water sector. We go to the companies owned by the municipalities, how much money they should invest every year in the local water sector inside the municipality. The tariffs cover, as I said before, covers all the costs. In Israel, there is a special and very unique mechanism. Every household gets 3.5 cubic meters a month for a certain tariff. It's a pretty low tariff, about $2 for every cubic meter. Now, let's say you have a swimming pool in your backyard, or maybe you have a very large garden. You want to grow trees. You want to have long bath every day. You want to wash your car every day, so it will be extremely clean. You can do it, but then the tariff jumps almost twice. So we don't limit the people how much water they need, how much water to use, but of course they have to pay for this water. Of course, it encourages the people to save water. And I can tell you for myself that 3.5 cubic meters a month can be enough for all the needs, showers, cooking, cleaning the house, etc. Now for the agriculture part, it depends of which water they get. If they use potable water, the price, of course, is more expensive. If they receive high-level treated sewage, so of course it's more expensive. If they get a little lower treated sewage for irrigation, the price, of course, is lower. But again, all the farmers, all the agricultural sector pays for the money, for the water they consume. Non-revenue water leaks is very important in Israel. In the national system, we lose only 3%, 1 to 3% in the national system. Inside the municipality, there is another leakage of about between 5 to 7%. But we encourage the municipalities or the companies, we encourage them to avoid leakage, to reduce the leakage, because, I visit several countries and they come to me or they have the solution, let's desalinate water. Let's build desalination plants. And building desalination plants is very expensive, of course, much more than natural rain. But first I tell them, let's check how much water you lose in your system, because it differs even in Western companies. Now speaking about Eastern Europe, but also here we heard that the numbers are very high. So instead of building desalination plants, which is very expensive, uses a lot of electricity, a lot of area, and of course it's much more expensive, first check your leakage. And you can see that after there was a very important, the companies that had been built, had been constructed, the water leakage has been cut down sharply. So let's take Ramat HaSharon, for example. It's a city, a municipality that is located in the center of Israel. The water leakage was 21%. It's now 3%. Eilat, in south part of the southern city in Israel, the leakage was 18%. It's now little less than 5%. So you can see the improvement in different municipalities. It was 15%, and now it's going down sharply. every year we encourage them to reduce the non-revenue water as much as they can, and of course they earn money for that. This is the standards. If they face the standards, they earn money. If they do not face the standards, they lose money. Water saving is very also important in Israel. Since kindergarten, since school, all the children are educated to save water. We had a very strong campaign in television. It was taken in 2000, between the years 2003, 2008. We had very severe drought in Israel. So there was an advertisement in the media. There was a model that her face were peeling out. So, and it was saying, if we don't save water, that's what will happen to our land. The land will dry out. Also, we gave each household this equipment. It reduces the pressure in the tap. So actually, it saves a lot of water. And in the toilet, we have two. It's mandatory if you build a house. There are two sizes of using the water. If you need more water, there's a bigger button that you press. But if you don't need such amount of lots of water in the toilet, there's a smaller button that you press. And of course, it saves a lot of water because the needs in every household goes mainly for toilets. I'll speak about water reuse, and then I have 1 minute left, and then Diego will speak about destination. Water reuse, as you can see, Israel is #1 in the world in water reuse. We have about little less than 90% of using the sewage for agriculture. So we treat the sewage actually as a source of water. So we have the desalination, we have the lakes, we have the springs, we have the drills, but also we have the sewage. The sewage is actually a source of water. As I said before, 85% of the water is taken for agriculture. This is the Shafdan, largest sewage treatment plant in Israel. It's pretty close to Tel Aviv, and if you visit Israel, I recommend visiting in this place. Little smelly, not too bad, but it takes the sewage from actually the center part, the center of Israel, Tel Aviv, and the region. They filter the water, pumps it to the special aquifer. It's been monitored all the time, and then it's been taken actually to the Negev, to a very dry area in Israel. And instead of being a desert, instead of being yellow, this part of Israel, the Negev, is actually a very important part of in Israel for agriculture. We grow them vegetables, trees, etc. according to international standards. Some of the fruits are exported all over the world, and the water is a very high quality and used for agriculture. Diego, 30 seconds. As you can see, the agriculture, instead of using between the 60s and the 90s, agriculture part was using only potable water. They're using less and less potable water, more and more effluent, because we have a lot of effluent. Instead of treating the sewage and putting it back into the sea, you can use the sewage as a source of water for agriculture. So the forecast for the year 2030 is that only 25% of the water for agriculture will come from potable water. And of course, because the population is growing all the time, we're having more and more sewage. Because of that, we have more and more effluent, and it will be a very important source of water for agriculture. So I'll stop here. Diego will speak about desalination and more issues. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias,
Thank you very much, Mr. Lipschitz.
Dejo con ustedes a continuación al profesor James McPhee, quien expondrá sobre escasez hídrica, análisis de cuencas,
assessment of basins, and an overview. He's a professor in engineering at the University of California. Currently, he's teacher, professor at the Faculty of Mathematics at our universities. His interests are mountain hydrology, snow and glaciers, and sustainability of hydric resources. Please go ahead. Good afternoon. It is a pleasure to see so many new faces and familiar faces. But also thank you to all the authority and the guest speakers from Israel today. I will try to briefly give you an overview, if you can dim the lights a little bit, please, from the academics, which is always a partial, incomplete overview. However, I see people here with a long hydric background, so pardon if I make a mistake, but I will try to give you an overview, an integral overview of the challenges that we have in the water sector, and then tell you about the efforts from the academics to contribute to the solution. I will skip all this part because you all know about it. We've got an ongoing crisis that today is a strange position that has dedicated himself to the topic of waters and being a transportation engineer. And all the time they ask me about the transportation system in Santiago, but they ask us anyway about waters because the reason for this is a crisis. And as I said before, this is causing a lot of pain to a lot of people. And this crisis has two phases: the scarcity and also the extreme disasters and events, which is present and will get deeper and become more serious in the future. Some figures just to give you an idea about the crisis in terms of basins. And here there is a map of the basins and what is the diagnosis regarding how extreme this crisis is in the country. Here we have a peculiarity, is that the geography is very varied, that makes all the local problems to be of a special nature and different from each other. However, there is this problems in the north and the south. In underground water, we have issues that manifest themselves, of course, with a decrease in the aquifer level that have become serious as a draft in the last 15 years is encouraging more and more intensive use of underground water resources. And this is causing this deficit that is piling up as the draft is increasing. Our storage system, surface dams and places such as that, with negative impacts all over our geography. And this represents a deficit that's not really happening today, but it's been accumulating. And it will be hard for us to get out of it because it will require technology and meteorology and somehow closer to normal within a number of years once we can say that the current draft is over so that our hydric systems can go back to a balanced level. In terms of quality of water, we have challenges also. Several surface and underground basins that are threatened, that have quality issues that are not ideal because of many reasons. Different uses of water, the productive activity, territorial management, have situations and negative impacts on the water quality. And this, of course, impacts ecosystems, communities, and puts the pressure on the hydric management at a national level. On the image, the colors are not clear, but we can see that the colors are more reddish and show challenges in quality of water. And these colors appear in different parts of the country, not exclusively to the driest or the wettest regions. I would like to stop here to reflect upon the urgency. Today, we are faced with an urgency situation, and normally urgencies put in the focus things that were not important back years ago, that were shaded perhaps by other urgencies. Every year there's a new urgency, but this is being manifested as an important issue. What are the urgent and important problems? That is the social equity, has been brought up already at this meeting, where water as a resource, as an element, is somehow an indicator, and we can see that the communities and most vulnerable populations suffer first when there is drought and climate change. And also, they're more exposed to risks associated with changes we're going through. The sustainability in the environment and the cooperation with a big strength of the environmental factors and ecological factors appear strongly in all the public speeches and also private speeches in regards to the future development model in the country, and also the economical resources, the efficient use of these resources, and having an important pillar in the production of food and raw materials, and more generation, hopefully, and depth in the generation of social benefits to all the domestic community. I will move forward now, and I will give you an overview, the concept of hydric security or safety, a concept from the United Nations that has several dimensions. And I will briefly try to give you a brief overview about hydric security and how that reflects in the reality right now in our country. As I said before, from the academic point of view, partially with incomplete information, with all the mistakes, probably. From the point of view, first, the human access to consumption of water, my perception is that what we have in Chile is an unequal situation, where there is an imperfect model for provision of water, where private actors are handling it, but in generally speaking, have provided a good coverage and a good supply and treatment of waters put at disposal domestically. Figures that appear positively, but where there are gaps in those communities and sectors that are not necessarily connected to the supply chain of the respective provider. Without a doubt, water and access to water have been important to the development of a productive system and sector in the agriculture, mining, and many other sectors where Chile generally is proud of, because it has achieved levels of performance and development that are quite important for the size of this country and the characteristics of our country. Generally speaking, I believe there is efficiency and there is breaches and gaps of efficiency. And once again, it's hard to generalize, but according to the realities in Chile, there are opportunities for development of people. But there is still this inequality, and there are injustices in the distribution of water and human development. And the market model, even though that presents opportunities to solve and assign waters, it is still imperfect. And these imperfections have not been resolved. For example, in the case of the market, the price or tariff fixation for transactions have always been an unsolved issue. From the point of view of the ecosystems, here we have important passives, results as a result not of evilness, but a result of a management system focused on the economic activity and a little on the human consumption that dates back to 100 years ago, with the oldest engineering works, together with this building, which was the third building built with the national incomes back then, and also the conduction of irrigation water, and here we have big challenges that probably require the reincorporation of waters to the system and rebuild ecosystems, which generates a big challenge in our country. From the point of view of risks associated to the climate, we have, as I said before, constantly the drought risk and extreme events little by little, our country has been bringing in their planning the associated risks of the climate. We're working from zero. We're ahead, incorporating this dimension. And here we have some associated topics associated to the hydric sustainability. Briefly, I don't know how much time I've got, but anyway, from the point of view of governance, we have governance gaps, fragmented institutions that take part where this is decided, and participation of stakeholders is limited. The inclusion of stakeholders in the water management is given only to the people having the rights, and many people have rights on water management, and they do not participate in that is the problem. And this is a complete information about our climate system, and our Andean system is incomplete, and our underground water system is incomplete. It is very complex and very difficult to be able to manage this all of this. From the point of view of cooperation, over the border cooperation with domestically, but it turns out that in Chile there are challenges associated to the cross-border cooperation. A dam, for example, or desalination plants where local communities are against this installation. Here we have a cross-border problem. And the crisis also helps us in this sense from the point of view of peace and political stability. Conflicts over water and environment conflicts appear. The access to water, we can map this directly to the social cohesion and immigration from one place to another, and we can see this worldwide as immigration and social cohesion are linked to prolonged drought and situations that are more structural of water scarcity. And from the point of view of financing, we have weaknesses and gaps in financing of many hydric sectors in the country, not only for investment, but also associated to supervision that complicate things, and also in the rural areas, which is a pending challenge for us as a country. I move forward to the climate change. All the things that we're talking about poses a big challenge in terms of the adaptation. We know that the future will be different from the past, and we know that we must get ready for it, but that preparation means innovating and do things differently and making changes in a lot of things that I will not read out loud because I don't have the time. And I'd like to do something else now, which is just to show you this system where I have two restrictions that generate a solution that is not possible. This is a system problem analysis. I cannot solve this. In order to solve it, how do we approach it? Typically, I would like to move the restrictions. If I have a restriction that enables the amount of water, probably I will have to increase the available water. But if I have a restriction that demands water from me, maybe if I can demand less, maybe I can provide a more feasible solution. And this appears on the system. It requires at least three things: agreements amongst stakeholders, knowledge, and technology. None of these three elements alone can solve the problem on its own. So my proposal is that we must move in those three dimensions. From the university, there are many initiatives, which some of them I lead. The Advanced Center of Water Technology, with the help of Corpo and the private sector, to change the capacities of the hydric sector to improve and look for solutions and technological solutions that somehow have not been incorporated intensively in our system, and to develop strategies for production. From the academics, we're not the only one. There are more that are supported by Corpo that have similar goals, and we're trying to move forward collaboratively. I will not get into detail about this, but we can say that this is focused on efficiency in the use of water, identification of new hydric sources, and transversally, we can categorize them from the point of view of projects looking for better information for management, and also projects that seek to move forward in the development of digging and technologies that are available in the market, but somehow are not massive in our sector. On top of this dimension, the third mission of the university, traditional university, 800 years, two missions, research and teaching. And now, with a lot of strength, the mission of transfer knowledge and contribute actively to the solution of social problems. And that's what we were doing with a model that we hope can be virtuous and provide results. We can always fail, yes, but we hope it doesn't happen. Where we collaborate with the final end users of water, but also with companies and suppliers and engineering companies that many times are the ones specifying the technical solutions to many problems. And finally, to close this, how this all relates to one another, we talk about the integral management of hydric resources. We need to define it. And how this hydric resources management and hydric safety interact in a continuous cycle that involves different stakeholders and water users, that involve the development of planning and plans to solve important issues, that define goals that are specific and typically very local, but require an energy flow and push forward that is very strong and decisive, that has to do with the international experience that coming from the state sector that intervenes with technical capacities and political will, and with a long-term overview to enable these processes, which are cyclic, where technology appears a little bit hidden in the generation of solutions. So thank you very much. Thank you, Professor James McPhee. The professor reminds me that the presentation will be available on the site where we will transmit and upload the transmission of this event. Right now we will invite Professor Cristina Francu, who will talk about the desalination of seawater for human consumption in Chile, lessons and reflections from a multi-scalable overview. Professor Francu is professor in environmental sciences at the Autonomous University of Barcelona and master from the Imperial College. Currently, she is professor at the Geography Department of the University of Chile. Her interests include topics of urban sustainability, hydric management, and social justice, and in studies of political studies. Good afternoon. Thank you for your invitation. At long last, we can get to know each other. Vice Dean, guests, ministers that were here and left. I hope that everything that we're going to talk about here will be broadcast. As I was introduced, my name is Maria Cristina Franco. I come from the Faculty of Geography at the University of Chile. And what I will present to you today are the results, findings, and conclusions of a research that we're conducting for over a decade at the Department of Geography with a group of students, postgraduate and pre-grade students, and also colleagues. And what matters on this presentation is to highlight concepts brought up by the Minister of Environment, how the social in sciences we can think about a sustainable hydric future for Chile, from equity and justice and inclusion. It's quite different when we talk about Israel and when we talk about Chile. Chile has a very big social inequality, socio-economic inequality, and how the hydric scarcity took place in Chile, and as it was brought up, in fact, we have a hydric crisis, which is global, but most particularly Chile has geographically an unequal availability, where in the north of Chile we have one of the biggest deserts in the world, where copper and lithium are extracted. We have a water rights code, and we need to start thinking about why we don't have water in Chile. And this water rights code talks about distribution, and there are rights that were given 2 decades ago, and sometimes a century ago, and they take advantage of this still. And this changes the availability for the rights of taking advantage of this water. They remain the same. And secondly, the code does not prioritize, and we have issues, an antagonism between sectors, and moreover, we have seen a concentration of water rights from the elites, especially on mining and agriculture, which is damaging rural populations. Besides, we have a mega drought for 13 years now, as the colleagues explained. The adaptability of the country to the climate change, facing this scenario where we have a decrease in the availability of water because of the mega drought and being in a hotspot of climate change, plus unequal distribution of water and the impacts on the distribution of water in the country and the water rights in the country, we ended up in the drinking water crisis for human consumption, the topic today. Engineering solutions, there are some of them. We can talk about mist, we can talk about seawater, we can talk about treated water, but not all the water can be drunk. As James said before, it's the most vulnerable populations that in the long term will have issues accessing water at the pace that we're in right now, where we are running out of the sources. To understand drinking water issues, we need to start thinking about rural areas and urban areas. In the rural areas, the crisis is also present. There are communities going through water issues, and they are depending on water tanks, trucks, and on the rural communities. They're running out of the water rights when they have them, because there are communities in the rural areas that don't have water rights. And generally speaking, in the rural areas, we can see an exhaustion of the most vulnerable sources that the rural populations have, which are underground water sources and streams. In the urban areas, the words and the letters are too small, but I'll tell you what it is. We have sanitation companies that are privatized, that have the legal right to sell and exchange rights, water rights, with productive sectors. Aguas Antofagasta, that have contracts with the mining sector, Aguas Andina, with hydroelectricity issues. We see the urban sources threatened by climate change, the mega drought, and so on. Low pressure on the higher towers, on the big cities where we have a high density, and there are problems coming up already. And generally speaking, there is an infrastructure, especially of the pipelines, that is degrading and are reaching their lifetime already. All of this, as a result, have a denominator for the consumption of water in Chile, is that we have the vulnerability to the access of water in Chile for poor communities in rural areas and urban areas. More than 80,000 families living in slums that are quite invisible, and that was brought up also, but they're usually invisible to the conversations about water safety in the future. There is a lot of dependence on bottled water. In the northern part of Chile, consume a lot of bottled water for direct consumption, which double the investment and investment and expenses in water for every family in the north. And more than that, they can be a source of diseases and impoverishment. What has been the state's response towards the water scarcity for human consumption? The answers to scarcity have been big plans on a domestic level, like the domestic plan or adaptation to climate change, to the agriculture in 2016, or irrigation efficiency announced in 2019. They focused on hydric offer through desalination plants, dams, or the hydric highway, which is a plan that is still not being applied. We can talk about their feasibility and usefulness, but what we lack here is the demand management in Chile, and integrated water management and their use. This fragmentation, for example, of the hydric resources do not allow that, and prioritization for human consumption and ecological change. And something was done in the last reform. Here's an example of the last state management, because many times they are promoted as measures to hydric scarcity, and big investments are made, but ultimately we don't have more water. Why does this happen? In 2019, in September, a week before the uprising, the social uprising, the president announced that they were going to have $5,000 billion for technological transfer for more efficient irrigation. The president back then ended up doubling efficiency in irrigation, and we could double the surface of irrigated surface. And in fact, instead of being a measure to release water, the more efficiency it is to cultivate more, to plant more. So it is a measure for the economy, not for the scarcity. Just as an example how this has been treated so far. And I want to give you two concrete examples, one quantitative and the other in terms of quality. First, I'd like to show you the example of Petorca. We conducted a research how water is supplied through trucks, and we analyzed the period between 2012 and 2018, the period where we have data. The important thing is that this is the volume. A is the volume of water delivered, and B shows how the money went. Here we have a total amount of 1.5 million cubic water, and 9,000 million pesos expenses. The surprising facts about this is that on this map, here you can see the Petorca region, the river Petorca, and the La Ligua River. And these round points, the red ones, show the point where water is extracted to be sold, distributed by trucks. And the yellow points are the points where the water is needed, and the CPR that receive this water through trucks. The bigger the circle, the higher the volume of water sold and received. And as you can see here in the middle of the two basins, there is a point where the most water is extracted, is where the most water is needed. So we interpret that as a demonstration. It's not that there is plenty of water, but the water is badly distributed. And the kilometers, the distance, the average distance done by the trucks is 10 kilometers on the province of Petorca. So this is a proof that there is an unequal distribution that has led to a fragmentation of water in terms of water rights and its accumulation by the farming sector. Here we can see that on the same sector, the orange color, most of the water ends up on the same sector, proving the argument established before. And here this is the most interesting point, which is the desalination of seawater. This project also comes up from the previous project, and these results come from Fondesit project. And this is the project that finished last year, and it has as an objective the impact of the measure established by the state to fight back water scarcity. We chose the Antofagasta case because they have a desalination plant for human consumption. It's one of the biggest in South America, because the city is not close to water sources, so they needed to wait for water distributors. And that changed in 80 years thanks to a 300-kilometer pipeline from the mountain range to the coast. Secondly, to this desalination plant built in 2003. Finally, the water came all the way from the mountain range in the region of Antofagasta on the coast. The main cities are located there. In the north, it's all the mining sites accumulated there. First, the fresh water came from the mountain range down to the cities. But in the construction of the desalination plant, the water from the mountain range, it remains there for the use of the mining sector, and the coastal cities are consuming desalinized water. From an engineering point of view, this is a perfect solution because the cities consume desalinized water, and the same with the mining sector. Considering the equity and social justice from a critical point of view that the geography offers, we wonder, what happens? Is it so perfect, this scenario? First of all, there is an important thing. It's not that the desalination plant was built to release water to the mining sector so that people could drink desalinated water. The sanitary company is still exercising water rights, and the replaced water is negotiated with the mining companies. So the desalination is a strategy to be able to keep the mining industry going. What happens in the city of Antofagasta? Once the water was replaced with desalinated water, in Antofagasta, 3 territories were created. In the northern part of the city, this is the city, in the northern part with the bluer color is the place closer to the desalination plant. And this area receives, and they drink desalinated water when they open the tap faucet. And in the southern part, they still drink mountain water. And in the middle, it's a mixed kind of water according to the capacity of the plants. We have to highlight that this is from 2017, and in the last 5 years, this has evolved. But we haven't updated the information yet with the sanitation company. What interested us is what people thought. What do they feel with the change once they were drinking mountain range water and then desalinated water? What they thought. Antofagasta is a city that has suffered a lot because of the quality of water, because formerly the water from the mountain range was loaded with arsenic. So the desalinated water came up as a good solution, but it didn't convince people so much. Generally speaking, here we can see the parameters: water quality, pressure, continuity of service, taste, smell, transparency, and an average mark. And mountain range water, and desalinated water, and mixed water. You can see that the fresh water is always better assessed than the desalinated water. This could mean that for people has been difficult the change. Generally speaking, they say that it's heavier water, and the perception of the water quality has many ramifications and many factors to be taken into account. But from a point of view, it's good to have this assessment into account. Secondly, we created heat maps where people have given it marks to the water that they drink. A quarter of the people living in Antofagasta know what water they're drinking. They think they're drinking desalinated water, and they're drinking the other one. People don't know really what kind of water comes out of their faucets. So it's important as an information. As you can see, taste of water is very badly assessed, especially in the northern part of the city. Closer to the tanks, it's better assessed. And it's a better evaluation there is for desalinated water in this part. And the evaluation of the quality has different negative values. So we can see a case of a city where they have a problem, a hydric problem in quality and quantity, but they don't overcome the issue of water crisis. What implications does this generate? Since Antofagasta represents a geography of Chile, and there are socio-economical differences there as well, the people's feelings about this end up in different actions in their households. In the household where they have more resources, they drink bottled water. They don't give tap water to their kids. And while on the poorer areas, people have to store more water when there are outages, and women are forced to drink water that they don't trust and give them to their children, and that involves hydric safety at the same time. So based on these findings, I wanted to show you some conclusions. First of all, what do we have to consider to incorporate desalination, thinking about a fair hydric transition? Because in fact, the Minister of Environment and this committee of hydric fair committee, they can actually accomplish something that guarantees equity, inclusion, and justice. So the first result is that depending on desalination of seawater to assure human consumption is a technological answer that is expensive as a first investment, and it's expensive in its function and maintenance. Before the massive use of desalination, because they intend to build it all along the coast, we will have serious environmental impact. Desalination requires a lot of energy, and the energy use is still on the fossil fuels, and desalination means needing a thermoelectric facility and going back to contributing to the same phenomenon, which we want to get adapted to. So this is something to be taken into account seriously. How desalination is established doesn't guarantee supply to poor, vulnerable population. The acceptance and availability and willingness to drink desalinated water can damage the human right to the water if it's not considered. So a proposal would be to involve citizens in the water assessment process to avoid conflicts with the proximity of plants, and consult people if they want to drink desalinated water, and to create a special standard for the use of desalinated water for human consumption. Israel, I think they have a standard, but not in Chile, because the standards are for continental waters, and we could talk about that in more detail, and to protect the population that are vulnerable towards the source, and look at the increases in prices and tariffs, and assure energy supply to the plants, and develop desalination together with the energy policy and a transition towards energy. We cannot think that all the energy going to feed these desalination plants will be renewable, because I cannot imagine the surface in the desert needed with the solar panels so that the plant works, so that this desalination plant works. Another important topic is to standardize the environmental assessment processes and how the desalinated water accesses the market of water rights. Finally, impressionable elements in the national strategy, and I agree with James, protection of body waters, continental body waters, and transition, and a smart use of water that implies a productive transition must be considered. The attractivist model has to be taken into account because there must be a more flexible legal framework which is written on stone over time and then is not changing because of demographic and climate change situations. And it considers to include communities and their needs and their willingness to drink water from other sources and their relationship to water. Clearly, as at a stage where they are acknowledging different cultures, and this will not be accepted by all the communities, indigenous communities, for example, quite easily. And something important in the end, improve the gender situation in the access to these resources. All our researchers show the importance of the quality of water in the access and the continuity of the service and in the pressure in the day-to-day life to women. And they are in charge of the household economy anyway. Thank you very much. Thank you, Professor. Finally, before closing this presentations, I'd like to say hello to Diego Berger, who will talk to us about desalination challenges and implementation and projections. Mr. Berger is a doctor in environmental engineering and hydric management at the Israeli Institute of Energy since 2014, coordinator of special projects at the National Company of Waters in Israel, Mekorot, with a presence in Mexico, Argentina, United States, Brazil, Peru, Guinea, and India. He has dedicated to the monitoring of hydric resources, models of precipitation, and underground waters, modernization and optimization of water supply systems. Please go ahead, Professor. Can you hear me? Thank you, Alejandro, for the invitation. I think a month ago we talked about it, and I hope that you're taking advantage of this visit. Finally, here I am. I will try in 20 minutes something that is very hard to do, but I will try to do it, though, to talk about one of the aspects that was requested by the University of the desalination. I will not talk only about it, but how the desalination enters the context of integrated water management system, and reuse and other challenges related to the topic. This is always at the start. Everybody likes it. The problem with the water is the management of technology. 95% of the problems are solved with something technological, but basically everything is based on management with help of technology, and this is important. There is no solution that is magic. Management is a reflection of education and value put by people on water, which was explained about the vision and realism of this. I want to explain to you, more than anything, what the 4 pillars are for the water sector in Israel. The first presentation presented here, Israel was blessed with the lack of water resources. That was the initial point. That is unlike in any other region in Latin America where the abundance culture started. In Israel, we started with the scarcity culture. That's why these 4 pillars were founded, which are the grounds for the success of the water sector in Israel. First of all, the law of measurement of waters from 1955. Everything distributed and consumed must be measured. And I'm talking about farming. And on the second presentation, when you were talking about the lines that do not cross each other, and the demands and the offer do not cross each other, problem is we don't measure the demand, we don't measure the offer. That's why I like to define it as hydro philosophy. We're trying to manage something without data. The second law is a law that goes after the water law, says that if we don't know the resource, we cannot manage it. The second, the law of water, all types of water, all the hydric resources, all the ways that we're talking about, treated effluents, all hydric resources belong to the public. So it's an obligation of the state to manage it well on the benefit of all. That's where we're in the industry and the farming for the wellness of all, not only for one section of society. The third pillar, the third and the fourth come together. To have only one manager, one person responsible, and it's sustainable because it's totally closed and it's self-financeable. When we talk about this one self-sustainable sector, we say that it must be also self-sustainable financially, which enables to move forward and distribute and supply water for all the necessary consumption. So, how do we measure water since 55 with this law? This shows the history of water. Is there a pointer for this? Thank you. We can see that in the year 1955, this law of water was developed in the middle of the population in Israel in green, the industrial consumption, and blue, domestic, and here farmer, and the total. In 58, we have data of consumption, and you can see that the domestic consumption was going up. And the agricultural consumption was always in the same magnitude. Here, what I want to put into focus is the policies implemented in relationship to that. How do we achieve this? A self-sustainable hydric sector. At the start, everything was based on irrigated agriculture, and infrastructure investment was done, and everything that has to do with the regulation of the infrastructure. And with the national aqueducts, came from surface irrigation to this kind of irrigation, and the increase of the efficiency in the use. Automation and technology was incorporated to increase efficiency of agriculture. In the mid-70s, the salty water was starting being used in the agriculture and the automation. Why am I showing you this? Because I want to prove to you and show to you when desalination came into play. So we're starting from the beginning. In the late 80s, the use of effluent started, and development of monitoring technologies to increase efficiency. And precisely at the start of this century, in 2003, 2004, desalination started on a big scale, on a larger scale, and also new standards started. Look at where desalination is located in this whole history. And I hope that you can remember from the first presentation when Chetty talked about how it was improved, this efficiency in the water, in the consumption in the city. In 2005, one of the biggest issues as to why it wasn't desalinated back then, because the Ministry of Economy was against it, because they said that we cannot desalinate, that the losses between cities are over 15%. Why that? Because we're not Rothschilds or millionaires, and to put expensive water in the grid, in the distribution grid, so that the most water can go anywhere and not for the consumer to drink it, is an ethical problem of a huge kind. So in 2008, you can see that the investment presented on the first presentation from 2005, 15% as an average in the whole country. Now we're under 10%, because you will see that there is an investment policy in this sense. So here what you can see is that the national aqueduct is the one integrating all the types of water. Back in 1964, when this project was finished, it was a project that 80% of it was for farming, and we're talking about a project that costed 5% of the GDP of Israel back then. to take this water to the agriculture, and it was subsidized. And they asked me, why did we do it? Because there was a geopolitical view about this, and also to build trust between the farming sector and the people. Back then, in '89, when the reuse of effluents started, generally the problem with the reuse of effluents is that the big cities that generate the effluents and the consumer is far from there, so we need to invest in infrastructure to reuse effluents. I could talk about this for hours, but this is the Tel Aviv plant that in '85 became a plant from using oxidation epilates to activated sludge plant or muds, because the effluents are a new resource and it's not a trouble. And why am I showing you this? That the population has to do with the desalination. When we started desalinating, you could see that the water was being reused already. So seawater has barium. Barium is not good for farming. And since we're using the effluents in Israel, we need to desalinate in 2 stages of desalination, because we need to remove the barium that might reach agriculture. So our desalination can cost between 20 and 20% when the water, desalinated water, is only for other purposes. So we're saying that this water will reach the farmer. We're looking at the whole chain of production here. And here you can see how the reuse that is definitely for farming of 85%, part of it goes to tertiary effluents, which I showed you, injected in the aquifer, and in part goes to secondary effluents, which is restricted use for agriculture. So the quality of this water is what we define drinkable water, because it's almost drinkable, because it's got nitrogen and phosphorus above the standard for drinking water. But basically, it could be done. Here you can see how this diminished the farming consumption in '89, where reuse started on a big scale, and now the use of water in agriculture is less than drinking water. Half the water going to agriculture, 49%, is water of agricultural reuse. How could this be done? Because in the 60s, 60% of water went to agriculture. Now it's only 53% going to agriculture. With the same amount of water, Israel is now producing 5 times more than it produced in the 60s. And that's where efficiency and technology come into play. But since the domestic use increased compared to the agricultural use, so then the reuse figures is relevant. When we compare this with India and South America and Africa, with a 40% in their use, can be relevant in a few places, because the amount will never be big. What I'm seeing generally in Latin America, that the offer is being managed more than the demand. Then don't try to be more efficient, giving more water. Why the price is related? The price of the water is related to the desalinated water. As it was shown on the first presentation, the price is uniform in the whole country, taking all the costs into account and how much water we're selling, and desalination costs are important. It includes development of future projects in the sector. 30% of the tariff is for future projects. So we don't have any state budget for this. That's why when we look at the price of water, domestic water in 2021, desalinated water is 15%, accounts for 15%. Effluent treatment is 20%, because the water bill takes into account the effluent treatment. Secondary effluents, more than that, has to be paid by the farmer. one of the biggest discussions right now in Israel is what will happen when we have more desalinated water in the future, as I will show you right now. What will happen to agriculture? The price of water will go up because the price of the desalinated water will be bigger in this package. What will happen to agriculture? There are two schools. Part of the agriculture will disappear, will go somewhere else, and the school that I belong to, which is technology, will reduce desalination process. My ambassador is quite happy about this. Yes, it will be possible to be done for the agriculture. So, what I was saying, the prices of water, which is something important, all of them have a quota of water to use. So the price is regulated according to how much is used. The water price is not to find people that use water, it's to regulate consumption. It's a tool for management. So that structure enables us the fact that the one that uses the most expensive water or the most expensive technology is not paying for it, but the whole hydric sector is paying for it. Enables us the introduction of new technologies when it's necessary, and also incorporate more expensive hydric resources such as desalination, and also bring in cheaper money to the sector. So the desalination, just to show you in Israel the distribution of it, the small plants done between the Dead Sea and the Red Sea date back to 67, more than 50 years ago. Small plants. The big plants were started on the year 2003, 2005, when the restructuration of the hydric sector was done with one manager only, and are the ones on the Mediterranean Sea. That implied that until 2016 or 2010, the water went up. In 2016, 75% of the drinking water used domestically was produced in desalination plants. That meant operational problems. In the year 2016, before that, 20% of the water in Israel was for the hydric sector. Now we are on 7%. Desalinate implies a lot of energy, and as you can see, to desalinate 1 cubic meter of seawater is in between 1 and 1.8 kilowatts. And we're working on reducing it. That's why the water tariff depends on the size of the plant, and it can be in between 0.65 to $1 per meter. To desalinate salty water or well water, depending on the safety, we require 1 and 1.5 kilowatt per hour. And then this could be a solution in Chile. So the price per cubic meter is quite small. The only difference is that we don't know about the capital investment. Another interesting thing from the operational point of view, in every desalination plant, we produce a tender. It's a different contract. Prices are different, as you can see. What the agreement will be for each plant, and the cost, and how much we're buying the plants for every cubic meter. Here, you can see this almost $1 until up to 65 cents. What we're putting in the water bill, we will pay this amount for this. We'll pay for a mix that takes every operational cost. Something else I wanted to show you. I'm finishing already. This is not for you to check out your eyesight, but this could be a private plant, a operated transfer. But here, it tells you how much you need to produce every day. So 150 million, for example, you can produce every day of the year. You receive a plan such as this every year. And the plant cannot do just what they want. They need to work according to this planification. There could be a deviation, a tolerance, in the small figures, percentage is per month and per quarter, but they cannot do just what they want. Even though on the contract there is established the price for cubic meter. What is the price for the cubic meter if we don't want to buy? And all of this is considered by the water authority. One of the problems right now is that different parts of the year we have excess of water, of desalinated water. There's the answer is to ask the desalination plant to stop producing, and we need to pay them 35 cents per meter when the price is 80. Why 35 cents? Because they cannot go out and to the street and sell them in buckets. So they need to go and sell it to the grid. So the fixed costs, they need to pay them anyway. So the choices we got is to inject that into the aquifer. Not only water from streams, from effluents. We started injecting it and feeding it this type of water. So places that are closer to this plant, all the injection process and pumping process is much cheaper than what we will have to pay if we don't want to pay them for produced cubic meter. That's why we started using this 35 cents of a dollar if we don't want to have that cubic meter. So this is the distribution of the hydric resources. In 2005, 71%. Natural water, 15% reused water, and 5% desalinated water. We're in the middle now. 20% reuse of effluents, 22 desalinated. But if we look at, as Jesse showed, the master plan for 2050, according to the climate change, we will have less natural water. That's why by 2050, 40% of the whole water will be desalinated, and 16 will be effluents, and the rest natural. What's the problem with the climate change? In my view, with these master plans in India, and as was shown the previous speakers, they can have more or less rain. The operational problem is not to have more or less rainfall. It's the variability, and this is what you're going to go through right now. There are years with more floods and other years with more drought. The increase of the uncertainty, and when the uncertainty increases, probably you can have the same amount of rain. What do we do with the excess? What do we do in the years that we have plenty of? How can we do? What can we do with this excess of water? What kind of infrastructure do we have to deal with this? And this is how we have to deal with it. Part of it is being more efficient, to be less vulnerable to climate change. We need to use technology because we need to use less water. And the other is to work with more technology and taking into account how we can store the excess. Part of it is injecting it in the aquifer, because other solutions can be more expensive. And this is the last slide to leave you with some questions for you. As you can see, we're going through a process that in Israel took 80 years. The water company was created 10 years before the creation of Israel. So this is through a geopolitical vision. So these questions that you're asking yourselves, what do we have to do with water? What kind of project in the country, province, or region? What is the role for the hydric sector and its goals? Mining, agriculture, a mix. What are the goals for that? Do you have all the tools to achieve those goals? Do you have any restraints, any barriers? Is it necessary to make a change? When I sit down and talk to people looking outside, the most difficult thing is to accept that they have an issue. It's like Freud, no? You know, a psychologist. And the other is it necessary to make a change? With the biggest consumers, it's hard for them to change the mindset. So I think this is all related to the country project that you have, in that everybody is on the same ship. I hope it's not the Titanic, but a ship that goes forward and can improve production. So once again, thank you for your time. Thank you very much, Mr. Berger. Now I would like to invite you for a break, and to those online, we will keep the transmission stopped in pause, and see you in 10 minutes for a discussion roundtable where Linda Daniel, Maria Franco, and Rodrigo Fruster will take part, and we'll discuss as a closure and water, energy, and desalination developments and underground waters. Thank you very much.